Take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy? I'm a human being, God damn it! My life has value! It's time to ask yourself what you believe.
Mass murder, torture, perjury, embezzlement, fraud, deception, treason. These are just a few of your many crimes against humanity. You will not win this war, for you are fighting the very essence of humanity.
Hi, welcome to Truth or Talk. I'm April Bowden.
And I'm Virstyne Henry.
Please visit our website, truthertease.com, and our store, shop.truthertease.com. Please like us on Facebook. We have a Facebook page, and just check us out. Look up Truther/Truth or Talk, and obviously you're listening to us on Blog Talk Radio, so follow us on Blog Talk if you like. That'd be really cool, too. So anyway, today's show we're going to be interviewing Leslie Carol Botha and possibly her colleague, Aline Danneman, who hasn't confirmed, but it could be but we're definitely going to be talking to Leslie. And Leslie's one of the predominant experts on the Gardasil vaccine. She's one of the creators of SaneVax, the website SaneVax. So we wanted to bring in our expert correspondent, Sarah Sotomayor, who was damaged by the Gardasil vaccine, and she has a lot of information on that. So please welcome to the show, Sarah. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, guys.
Hey, Sarah, how are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Great, great.
So, Sarah, before we get started, tell us again your blog, because you're writing a blog now on your injury and how you're working to heal yourself, and you just posted the article, the response to that guide. Because last time we had you on, you were talking about you were writing this doctor who had written it on the paper, and then you wanted to send him a response. And you did, so that's up on your blog right now, right? So tell us where your blog is.
It's sarahshealingjourney.wordpress.com, and my latest article is where I responded to a doctor who wrote. His article was titled "Vaccine Benefit Awareness," and so I really couldn't let that slide because it was just so ridiculous, and it was so. There were just no scientific facts present whatsoever in his article, so I just kind of, I just wrote the article and I made sure I put so many facts. Like, you just can't deny what's in the article and what the research that I put into it. And he hasn't responded yet, and it's been, I think, more than a week and a half, or just about a week and a half. So,
Well, I read the article. I read the original, and then I read I read your article, and I just felt like you sounded more like the doctor because it was just like he was just rambling. He didn't really have any evidence to back up what he was saying. It just sounded like it. So it was. I thought you did a really good job, and
thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and we need more people to come and speak out, and I think that we can respect doctors, but we don't have to deify them, Right. And I think a lot of people deify them, so when a doctor comes and they say something, then, people are afraid to go against them because they're like, oh, well, they're a doctor. They've gone through so many years of, school. Obviously, they know what they're talking about. Well, not if they're being told the wrong thing. Right. If they're being then they've been going through, I don't know how many, 8 years of school, 12 years of school to be indoctrinated, because they're basically, they don't really have time to do research on the stuff that they're told.
And they don't even take a class on vaccines. You have to volunteer to learn about vaccines, and that's pretty much on your own time. So most of them really don't even take a class on it.
They don't even give the vaccines usually, too. It's like the nurses that do. Do you know if nurses get classes on vaccines?
I don't know if they learn about it in their training, but nurses are more likely to question the vaccine doctrine than doctors are, because I had a nurse one time when my oldest son was really little, and she said to me, oh, I don't know if I'm going to give my kid all the vaccines. And I was kind of shocked to hear that because I'd always been told by anyone in the mainstream and medical establishment the exact opposite, like, oh, you have to do this or else they're going to die. Essentially, that's the kind of thing they tell you, that, prior to this, people had no immune system. They just died as soon as they got in contact with any disease. But now, we can live because we have these life-saving vaccines. But she said that, and I was really shocked by that because she said, a lot of these aren't necessary, and I really think that some kids, she goes, I'm a patient advocate because I actually talk to the patients. So I happen to believe that some people are telling me the truth when they come in and say that their kids are damaged by vaccines. So I found that to be interesting. And so I think nurses are more likely to, because like she said, she's more likely to be involved with a patient. And then when you hear the patient's stories, you don't just think that they're all lying. I mean, are they all just making it up? Yeah. Whereas the doctors, they don't really take the time to listen to the patient's stories and things like that. But you're right, the nurses are usually the ones that give the vaccines. And if you question the vaccines to your doctor, they're generally trying to make you feel like an idiot.
Yeah. And then they fearmonger you and say, if you don't do this, your child's going to get cancer, or they're going to die, or they're going to come down with this chronic disease for the rest of their lives.
Exactly. Yeah, and it was when Aiden, his regression was after, as both you guys know, the MMR and the chicken pox. Mm-hmm. And when when I went in for that vaccine, I remember I actually asked the doctor, I said, I'd heard the MMR caused autism. Actually, this wasn't when I had Aiden vaccinated. Sorry, this was when I had my older son vaccinated, Avery. And he tells me, oh, no. That doctor was a liar. He was discredited. He was just trying to make money. So he's talking about Wakefield. At the time, I didn't know who Andrew Wakefield was. But I now know that that's who he was talking about. He was saying, oh, it's this British doctor, and he was just in it for the money. And as we all know, people didn't make no money. And if anything, he lost
his money, definitely.
He lost everything. I mean, it's just, and we all know that was just a complete, So anyway, it's just a whole big shim-sham on the whim-wham. So you have that article, which I think is excellent, and I'm really glad that you wrote it because that guy deserved a little smackdown.
Yeah.
He really had it coming.
He really did. Like, he really didn't stand a chance. And it's really sad that, somebody who went through 8 years of medical school has no clue about any of this research at all. And instead of some of these articles that I quoted from, like the Shiv Chopra article about vaccines and basic biology, I found that when I was 16, and it took me 2 seconds on a Google search to find it. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure this out. It's just basic, fundamental biology. You can't vaccinate because it totally surpasses the immune system. The immune system is in your gut, it's in your alimentary canal, and unless it's pre-digested through the alimentary canal, through your blood system, which is broken down into its basic amino acids and then broken down even further into self and non-self. And vaccines don't allow that to happen because it just goes right through the skin, right into your arm. So how you can't surpass that. That's biology. That's how you're made.
Right.
Yeah, and I've had a lot of doctors that have actually saved me and been nice to me. So it's not like all doctors, but it's just like, if you're paying like, I don't know, in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe more, you're sacrificing your life. Basically, doctors, they go to school, they study, they don't have a social life. They're sacrificing their lives to become a doctor, and yet they come out and they still don't know how to cure people sufficiently or to prevent diseases like they want it to. A lot of them go in with good hearts and they want to help people. I would be pissed.
Right.
The doctors need to rise up and be like, why did I spend like $1 million at Harvard and I don't know this shit?
Yeah, exactly.
They like to attack, the lay people for like pointing it out because their egos get like attacked,
Inflated.
Inflated, yeah. Well, I mean, like their egos can get inflated, but then some doctors have come around too and woken up and been like, oh, humble diet, but there's but I'm saying like if a layperson even questions them, not even attacks them, but even questions them, they get defensive and their ego gets attacked, and they like to attack the lay people back, but they really need to be attacking the places where they went to school, the places where they spent money, where they sacrificed their lives,
Yeah, instead of firing that patient, they'll fire the patient if they don't even question it.
Yeah, I definitely think that something needs to be done with doctors that go to schools. Like they need to get together and like really, because that's just, what is the word? I can't think of the word. I want to say not false advertisement, but it's just like they're not being
not
told
informed consent.
Yeah, they're not being taught what they should be. It's trickery. I don't know. Like I just be really angry, because I've known a couple of doctors, and I know like they put their heart and their soul and their time and years into to their profession,
right,
and money, and it's just I'd be pissed. That's all I have to say. I'd be pissed at the system itself, at the medical school, at whoever's in charge of giving them curriculum and educating them the way that they should be. I'd be pissed.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that because one time I heard this interview with Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, and she said that was how she felt, like because she was basically taught almost nothing about vaccines, and her assumption was that they were these, dead diseases with a little bit of saline solution in them. And then when she actually found out what was in the vaccines, she was like, "Are you kidding me?" And she went to a conference, she said that, where they were trying to talk about they were talking about the dangers of giving these vaccines to pregnant women, and they were figuring out, the doctors were all kind of consulting on how would we get pregnant women to take these when there's all these side effects and all this dangerous stuff that so can you believe that? So, it's hard for me to believe sometimes when these guys say they don't really know they sort of play ignorance that there are any problems with vaccines, because when you really push them, they usually will say that they do know, but they chalk it up to rare, or that it's or it's a coincidence because you were getting sick at the time, or you were they'll have
genetically your genetics. It's all your genetics. It's all your fault.
Well, but genetics, didn't used to be so jacked up as they are apparently now, because everybody seems to be getting sick after taking these vaccines, when we didn't have so many, we didn't see so much sickness. And the more vaccines we get, the more sickness that we're seeing. And so, that, I don't know. And then the whole pregnancy thing, we're going to ask these ladies about that, about the flu vaccine. Did you research that at all, Sarah? The whole, because the flu vaccine we know has caused a lot of increases in miscarries, and when they give it to pregnant women. It's actually not approved for pregnant women.
Yeah, they just say it's approved. It's really not.
Right.
And there's thimerosal in the vaccine, which is mercury. And the mercury isn't even going to go to the mother. It's going to go straight to the baby.
Ugh.
All the baby gets those, the toxins, and especially if they're firstborn, if it's their first time having a child, the baby is then going to get all of the mother's toxins that she already had even before the vaccines. Mm-hmm. So you just keep hitting hit after hit, and the kid doesn't even have an immune system or a digestive system that's fully developed, and you're going to hit them with this vaccine. I don't know why people are so surprised that they cause miscarriages.
Right. Yeah, no, I know, because it's everything that you're saying. But the flu vaccine, I from what I'm understanding, is that once they started including the H1N1 they started including the swine flu and these other things, then that increased the number of miscarries and stillbirths and sterility, things like this that they're finding in women and pregnant women. And I think that because we're going to talk about Gardasil, since we're going to talk to Leslie, and obviously you have a lot of experience with that, Sarah, but I think that's true of the Gardasil vaccine too, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a, oh goodness, it's polysorbate 80, and that is a food additive, and that's one of the ingredients in the Gardasil vaccine. Well, what it causes, well, first of all, it's a carcinogen. It can cause cancer right off. It can also cause birth defects when you want to have babies, or you just become sterile. You totally become sterile. There's sodium borate, which is roach killer. I don't even think I need to explain that, what kind of problems that is. And then there's aluminum, which is a known neurotoxin. So if it's going to attack your nervous system, then you're probably going to have a backlash on your endocrine system because they both work together.
Hey, Sarah, I'm curious, have you done any research? Do you know, we know all of these ingredients are in the vaccine. So say you said sodium borate is roach killer, right? But if somebody, do you know if anybody has come out and said, oh, well, we put sodium borate in because it does this? Do they give a false reason as to why these certain chemicals are in the vaccines? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I haven't heard anybody say, oh, this is the list of ingredients we put in the Gardasil, but they're all good for you. I have not heard that yet. They don't really, give you that information. They don't really want to give you informed consent. It's just good for you, and if you don't, you'll get cervical cancer, or now it's a STD. Well, yeah, because I haven't really picked one.
Because I would tell people about the ingredients in the vaccines, and they would just be like, well, they must be in there be in there for some reason, for some good, And I was like, well, maybe they lie, because you can go to the manufacturer website and you can look at the ingredients in the vaccine, but they don't really say why they're in the vaccine. So it's like nobody questions it. So they're just mixing shit up for shits and giggles.
Yeah, and then it's contaminated on top of it with the HPV synthetic recombinant DNA, and that just causes a slew of autoimmune disorders.
Yeah.
So and nobody knows about that. I've said that to people, and they're like, "What?" And it's like, yeah, that's been known since 2011 now, and they just, it's hard for them to wrap their heads around that it's contaminated.
Yeah. What are some of the side effects? You had a lot of side effects from the Gardasil vaccine. Tell us some of the side effects that people have experienced.
They've become sterile. They've had seizures. I think narcolepsy is one. I've heard of girls who've had strokes, and they've been honor students, and they always got good grades, and then that went down the toilet. They weren't able to function normally, and then their personality totally changed because it affected their frontal lobe, which is where you develop your personality, and it totally warped it. And of girls losing their memory, they lose short-term memory loss, or they die, or they're basically living in a hospital because they keep having these reactions, or they keep having these seizures that they can't stop.
Yeah.
Or it's like me, you have rheumatoid arthritis, or you can get fibromyalgia, and then that can just create a slew of problems because your terrain is so toxic that you're not immune to anything anymore. Your immune system is so susceptible that you could be having infections just from your immune system crashing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and this is kind of, all these diseases that you're talking about, rheumatoid arthritis, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, these are all new diseases. They've only, I never heard of these when I was a kid. These didn't exist as far as I know. And so all these have been, I think, a result of this vaccine program, this mandatory vaccine program, because people are just getting more and more sick, and it's like they're not even really trading illness to illness, because as we know, the vaccines don't work. So they're really not doing anything to help you, and they're doing all these things to hurt you, because these diseases are all cropping up, and any of these kids who have, the neurological disorders that you mentioned, a lot of those are accompanied by fibromyalgia or some form, maybe to a lesser degree, but they're having some sort of candida or yeast issues, autoimmune problems, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right, and we got my test results back. I did a detoxification profile to see how well my liver was detoxifying, and I already, from researching even before I did the test, I knew there was something wrong with my phase 2 in my liver, because that is what allows the body to finally excrete those toxins. Phase 1 just kind of binds them up and then sends them into phase 2, which is then into 7 different categories, which is like your sulfation pathway, methylation pathway. And so what it showed, it was just showing I had a ton of metabolic impairments. It showed that my DNA wasn't, or I had genetic inadequacies, which is just saying that my DNA wasn't able to express itself, and that the way the metabolic things that you need, such, like metabolites or to have your lactic acid and pyruvic acid balanced, it was showing that my nervous system was so damaged that it was likened to autism. And that's the first time that that's really been written down. And it even said in the lab results to not get any more vaccines, to not even space the vaccines out, which is just ridiculous. Spacing out the vaccines is you're still adding to that bucket of toxicity.
Exactly.
So, I mean, the test confirmed really everything that we've been saying. And then I did that test around April, or April, May, and we didn't get it back till now, but I did everything that it said to do, like adding turmeric, glutathione into the system, which I do liposomal glutathione, which is even better than an IV, and it's less expensive, and to start adding things to help opening all those different pathways within the liver, and I've cleared it up. I mean, I just have a lot of regeneration work to do and really finishing up with the liver. The liver is really my only impairment that's happening right now. It's still having trouble with detoxification and, really getting rid of that recombinant DNA, which I don't have a blood test because they haven't created a blood test for you to actually find out if you have the HPV DNA in your system. But we do a specific applied kinesiology, which is just a way of saying muscle testing, which goes on the fact that your body knows what it needs and what it doesn't need, and so you have certain techniques where you do that certain testing. And every time we go to test my liver that way, it always shows up as either retrovirus or DNA impairment. So, I mean, we've been on it. So, I mean, it was a great confirmation to know that we're doing the right thing, but to see that the damage that it caused.
Yeah, no, it's true. And then I remember years ago when I was researching in this, and I came across this information about fibromyalgia, and one thing it said was that, contrary to what is commonly thought about it, it's actually a sensory disorder. And that kind of blew me back, because when you have vaccine damage or you have autism, a lot of times you have, like you're talking about low muscle tone and these kinds of things with the muscle problems, but a lot of that is sensory, like your senses aren't, your sense of touch, your sense of feeling, your vision, all these things become, it's not even like how people normally would think of, say, visual impairment. It's sort of, it's a different realm. It's this whole sensory system, which is actually, has to do with, is neurological with your motor planning and all these kinds of things.
Exactly.
So it's really, and then they said that that's actually what fibromyalgia is. And so I said, well, obviously it's connected to, immune system problems and candida, but you wouldn't know that by seeing how the pharmaceutical and how the doctors treat it, because they all act like, well, it's a pain, you need these drugs for pain management, and that's really all you can do. But it's not. It's, it's a sensory thing, and so you need to detoxify. And it's also interesting that you mentioned the liver, because we had, Aiden's always had this, distension in his belly.
Yeah, so do I.
Yeah, it's always been this, bloated-looking belly. I think you and I, Sarah, we talked about this one time.
Yeah.
Off air, we were talking about how it sort of looks like how you see the African people, and they have they're hungry, they're not fat, but it's like a round belly, and it just looks bloated. And so for years I thought that, at first the doctors were telling me he has toddler belly, because toddlers kind of do look like that when they're little. But they were telling me that until he was 5 and 6 years old, and I'm going, he's too old. He's not a toddler anymore, Yeah. And then after a while, then we finally started going to see a damn doctor, and they said, well, he's constipated. And so we started giving him aloe vera and treating that and everything. And then it was only until very recently that we started seeing our cease homeopath, and she goes, no, that's the liver.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is, because that's the thing that I'm still like struggling with. I still after I eat, I get this distended belly, and it just doesn't want to go away. So and it's because this is the thing, is that they don't talk about this. Is in traditional Chinese medicine, the liver is so connected to the peripheral nervous system. It actually helps control the nervous system. It helps to send out certain messages to say you need to do this and you need, it's like that. And so that's really where I'm having my problem, is the peripheral nervous system and the liver, and they both go hand in hand. And so once you start, it lessened for me when I started doing glutathione and drinking kombucha, fermented kombucha, and kefir. That really noticeably made it go down, but I still have that, and it's liver toxicity. That's the only way you can, describe it.
Wow.
Yeah, and Aiden, since we started him on these homeopathic remedies to work on the liver and the kidney, this is the slimmest his stomach has been that I can, that I've noticed in forever, because I would give him aloe vera, I'd give him things that I thought needed to help him clean out, and those would help, but they were temporary. I wouldn't notice it over like a week. I'd notice it just over that. As soon as he sort of cleared himself out, he would be, he would sort of flatten out his stomach again. Because like you say, Sarah, it's like once he eats, then it distends, and you think it's just the food in there, but it actually could be some of these organs have inflammation, and so they're not clearing out the toxins. You're not getting rid of the toxins. You're not digesting your food well. All these things are getting backed up and fermented in your stomach, which then causes candida.
Right.
And so you need to push that out with, like you're saying, the kombucha and things like that. And so, we're giving him. Giving him kombucha every day too, and that I think has been helpful as well. And just sort of eliminating some of these foods that cause inflammation and cause candida, like sugars and these types of things. So that all is necessary, and you have to do them all. It's really hard.
Yeah, you can't just eliminate one thing. You've got this whole list, and then it's like, oh God, what am I going to eat?
Right, exactly. But you have to be doing these things simultaneously. It's like you got to be eliminating and then adding certain things, and then you've got to be, because you got to add the fermented foods, you got to eliminate the foods that cause all this. So it's a lot of work. I think, hopefully we can get the message out to people that you really, really want to think twice about vaccination, because we're dealing with this, and Sarah's dealing with this, I'm dealing with this at home, and it's a lot, and it's a long, long process, and it's hard.
Yeah.
You make it seem like you're so upbeat, and you're so, and you don't really feel sorry for yourself. You kind of just go about your business and everything. But it's hard work. It really is. Make no mistake. I know you have to struggle a lot to do this, and I know because I do too.
Yeah, this is 6 years. This is 6 years and 4 months now, and there's not been one day where you stop. You just never stop. You keep going. But there's no reason. I'm not going to stop because I want to be healthy. And that's my end goal. So, you do what you have to do. And, for me, whenever when we had to start eliminating foods, it was immediate. It was clear that this was causing major problems, because I would just be in pain for a month for eating, having a certain ingredient in one thing that was gluten-free, and it would just set me off for pain and inflammation.
You mean that wasn't gluten-free? Is that what you mean?
Well, see, gluten-free, that can be deceiving as well, because then we're like, okay, well, I have a corn allergy, and they hide corn in a lot of things. Xanthian gum is a derivative of corn, and if you just looked at that, you wouldn't say that's corn. So we learned through me having reactions to certain things, and I'm still having reactions. I had a reaction this week to something that was, gluten-free. There was nothing in it, and this one ingredient, potato starch, I have in one other thing, but it just was the fact that it was too much starch, and my body just could not process it.
Right. Yeah, gluten-free doesn't necessarily mean that it's safe.
Right.
That's a good point to bring up, because a lot of these gluten-free products, for one, I have to read these things very, very carefully, because gluten-free can mean Aiden's allergic to eggs. We can't, so if it's bread, for example, you got to have no yeast, no eggs,
and
you got to have, if it's and now we're actually, because we're working with the body ecology diet, we're also doing no rice. So because sometimes these things, even though they don't have, gluten is the protein that you find in wheat and barley and rye. It's not, and so, but there's other foods that don't have that same protein in them, but they still have like that goopy, kind of starchy, like she's just saying.
Sticky, yeah. Anything sticky is really bad because it like coagulates the blood, and then the circulation is just shot. It doesn't work right, so then it ends up. For me, it sticks in my joints. It sticks in my muscles and my tendons and ligaments, and then, I'm in pain for about a week.
Yeah. And it's so that all these things they affect like your muscles and your pain, and so what I see with my son is that through his pain management, because you are bedridden, but he when he gets in pain, he becomes very hyper, and he's like, he doesn't really know what to do with himself. His body is kind of like he's out of his sorts, out of his
yeah, like sensory overload.
Exactly, and so that's a very common thing when you see these kids that have autism and they're tantruming or they're having these sensory overloads. A lot of that is just these toxicities or food sensitivities. So all that stuff is really, really important and really helpful to know that and when you say gluten-free, sometimes people give up because they go, oh, my kid's not cured of autism. So they'll try the gluten-free diet for like 2 weeks, and then they'll go, oh yeah, it didn't work, so I'm not. But that's really a bad attitude, because you need to, if that doesn't work, then that means that you're probably not eliminating enough.
Right.
It doesn't mean that it's not going to work. It just means that you're not doing enough. You need to go deeper and sort of say, well, it could be rice, it could be corn, it could be soy, it could be all these other things. And a lot of these gluten-free products have genetically modified corn or soy in them.
Right.
And so it doesn't, you still have to be organic, you still have to be, and you pretty much, I don't know about you, Sarah, but we hear like almost everything is made from scratch.
Yeah, it's pretty much made from scratch. I mean, there's not really much you can buy. And anyway, it's not good to buy processed. Even if it's organic, if it's non-GMO, I can't do it because it's processed. It's not fresh, and my body can't digest it properly. It doesn't have the enzyme production that it would need to do that. And my body, and then the body just goes, well, I already have enough of a toxic load. I'm not going to add any more. I can't handle any more.
Right, and sometimes it helps if you are eating grain, even if it's a non-gluten grain, to like soak it and sprout it. Do you guys have to do that with your food?
Yeah, like if we sprouted, and even that kind of bothered me because I wasn't able to break it down as readily, which is odd because it's sprouted, it should be going, but we didn't soak it. So then that's what we were going to try next is, well, I guess we need to soak it. We have to go a step further.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah, that's helpful. We get our flours and things. Like I make his muffins and things out of these few non-gluten grains that we use that are allowed on the body ecology diet. But I get them soaked and sprouted, so they're already
pre-digested.
Exactly, they're already pre-digested and stuff. So it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work, you guys, and it's you don't just get to like eat healthy and then it's done with. You actually have to really, really work hard, and so well. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sarah.
I was going to say.
Go on, Sarah.
I was going to say you can't get health out of a box.
Or pill. Or pill.
Or pill.
No. Right. But you can't get health out of a box or a pill, but it's like just because something says it's natural or says it's gluten-free,
it doesn't mean it is.
It doesn't mean that it is, and it doesn't mean that it's healthy. Because a lot of these gluten-free products, too, by the way, have a ton of sugar. And so, because sugar is a natural preservative, so you can call something all natural, and it's natural, but it's got a ton of sugar in it. So because sugar helps keep things fresh longer. So they don't have to put in MSG or, some kind of artificial, nitrate to make it stay on the shelves longer. So you got to be careful out there. And so, anyway, we're going to go ahead and cut to break. But thank you, Sarah, for being on, as we love to have you as much as possible. We really appreciate it. Tell us again, tell our audience where your blog is.
It's sarahshealingjourney.wordpress.com.
All right, there it is. So thank you, Sarah. We're going to cut to a short break, and we get back. We're going to be talking to Leslie Carol Bassa. We may also have her colleague Lynn Daneman with us. We're waiting to see if she's available, but we will be back in a few, and we'll be talking to one or two lovely ladies. So thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Right. Bye-bye.
Yes, hello. I wanted to say that I love the conspiracy realist t-shirts that you can get only online at ship.truthortease.com. I knew a conspiracy when I saw America is run by the CIA. Yes, the CIA. That's why you have to wear a conspiracy realist t-shirt all the time to let people know that you are not stupid. Go to ship.truthortease.com. Ship.truthortease.com. Ship. Like to go shipping when you buy things at the grocery store. truthortease.com.
Hi, and welcome back to Truth or Talk. On today's show, we're talking to Leslie Carol Botha. Leslie is a women's health educator, a publisher, author, and broadcast journalist. She is an internationally recognized expert on women's hormone health, as well as a social and political activist. She is a member of truthaboutgardasil.org and one of 6 women who presented research and data to the FDA in March of 2010 on the alarming statistics of Gardasil and Cervarix deaths, injuries, and harm in comparison to other vaccines. She is also the past Vice President of Public Relations for SaneVax, an organization dedicated to educating the public about the safety and efficacy of vaccines. She runs a local radio show, Holy Hormones, Honey, the greatest story never told on KFRC FM 88.9 in Fort Collins, Colorado. To read more about Leslie's work, you can find her at holyhormones.com and sanevax.org. Please welcome to the show, Leslie.
Thank you very much. Delighted to be here.
Hello, Leslie.
Hello, April. So grateful that you asked me to join you on your show.
Oh, well, thank you. That was my friend Virstyne, though.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay.
It's okay. I'm Virstyne. Nice to meet you, finally.
And nice to meet you as well.
It happens sometimes. I think people think we're one person.
Yes, you know that.
But, yeah, it is great to have you on the show, Leslie, because we have talked about you, or we have several times in the past, because we've done 50 shows about Gardasil vaccine, and you have some really good research on the subject. So we're going to go ahead and start off by asking you about that research, because we've referenced it so many times. So tell our audience a little bit about the HPV vaccine and how you started researching it, and what were the results that you found once you did.
Well, it did start quite a few years ago. In fact, on my radio show in 2006, when the Gardasil vaccine first came out, we quickly did some research and realized the fallacy of having a vaccine for a virus that passes through 90% of women's bodies within 2 years without incidents. So that was the first alarm and trigger. And we just started talking about that. I interviewed Barbara Lowe Fisher from the National Vaccine Information Center. She brought more information to the table that raised our concerns. And then I just became connected, actually, through Denise Melton. Denise Melton is the grandmother of Jessica Faye Erickson, who is the first known death from Gardasil. Mm. And when I had a comment from her on my blog, holyhormones.com, she changed everything. This was no longer a discussion about statistics and research and numbers and why do we really need this vaccine, and I have some personal concerns about it, which I'll get into later. But she brought the reality to the table that there are deaths and there are problems with this vaccine. And it was Denise who got me involved with a whole network of mothers who had injured daughters. And, of course, at that time, they didn't have a voice. They weren't organized. They didn't know where to turn. And so I started interviewing these girls and their mothers. And Cynthia Janet came on board. Frida Barrel out of Scotland came on board. Jani Silkvis out of the Netherlands came on board. And that's when we really started looking into the FDA documents and Merck's documents on Gardasil. And that is when the alarms really sounded for all of us. And let me share that with you. In May 2006, the FDA released the VRBAC document on the HPV vaccines, many, many pages of documents. And we went reading through these documents trying to get a handle on what they were saying about this vaccine. And lo and behold, in a table in an obscure place, there was a table that said that if a girl is previously exposed to HPV and she gets vaccinated with Gardasil, her chances of getting cervical cancer increased by 44.6%, and if she was vaccinated with Cervarix, her chances of getting getting cervical cancer increased to 32.5%, I believe is correct. We couldn't believe it. We kept going back and forth. Is this right? Are we wrong? We started writing about it. Of course, then we got panned for it, but we stuck to our guns, and we finally found the right people who are familiar with the same studies and who came back to us and said, yes, you are right. Now, in September 2008, the FDA released a closing document on Gardasil, and that document stated that 73.3% of the girls in the clinical trials developed new medical conditions. Those were appalling statistics.
Yeah.
And that's when this whole story started going. And that's when we started rallying. There was Sandra Baddock, my co-author of my book, Frida Barrow, Yanni Stokvis, Rosemary Mathis, Cynthia Janik, and myself, who wrote a paper called Global Concerns About Gardasil, and we submitted it to the Robert Koch Institute in Germany because they were the first to raise concerns. And that was our first paper. It's still on my blog, and I know that there are copies on probably the Sane Vax blog as well. And we sent that out, and it went viral. And then we started making contact with the FDA, and we had numerous phone calls with the FDA, and we did numerous presentations for the FDA.
And so they know what's going on, right?
They know what was going on, and of course nothing really came of it. But we were raising awareness left and right. Now, we were also very clear with them. We're following this route. We're doing our due diligence in sharing with you what we have researched, what we have come to find out about this vaccine. But we are taking a two-prong attack to this. We're informing you, the FDA. We are also informing the public. And that was our strategy from the beginning. We started writing, we started doing radio interviews, we were in touch with more and more parents were coming to us and about their concerns, about the damage done to their daughters. And what started out as a small group of 6 women and probably about 10 or 12 parents has now blossomed into an international movement of 26 countries, trying to bring awareness to the problems with the Gardasil vaccine and the imminent dangers.
You touched on a little bit about how the human papillomavirus is in our bodies, how it passes through our bodies, and I was wondering if you can elaborate a little bit more about how it's actually part of our genetic makeup and how it has been fabricated to make it look like it's the cause of cancer.
Well, those of us who are in the, well, let me put it this way. Do you know what HPV stands for?
Human papillomavirus, right?
Help pay for Vioxx. Now, the medical industry, in fact, I have this in my paper because I just used it the other night. Let's see if I can find it. The medical industry does a great job, or the pharmaceutical industry industry does a great job of inventing an illness and then inventing a cure for that illness. Now let's look at women's bodies. Where is the cervix? In a deep, dark, hidden place. What happens when women hear cervical cancer? They panic.
Yeah. About.
And you've got an uneducated demographic of young girls and their mothers. And here's the sad situation. Here is the sad situation. The mothers who did get their girls vaccinated obviously weren't anti-vacciners.
Uh-huh.
They believed in the system. They believed what the doctors were telling them. They believed the media commercials and the award-winning jingle that Merck put out. One less girl to get cervical cancer, girls dancing around their living room. In fact, there was a group of girls in Iowa dancing around the living room saying, we're getting the Gardasil vaccine. We're going to be one less girl. Well, guess what? 3 out of 3 girls were adversely affected by the vaccine. In fact, and I did write about this, Merck was awarded, got an award for that jingle for, quote unquote, creating a market out of thin air.
Oh, God. Oh, my God, that's sickening.
It really is. Wow. For creating a market out of thin air. So there was no need to
thin air awards? Like what type of award?
Yeah, so they got an award because they knew they were basically patting themselves on the back, knowing that there was no need for a vaccine, cervical cancer vaccine. And, you know, as we know, when you do the research, most of the vaccines, their efficacy is very questionable to begin with. But certainly HPV, why do they think HPV causes cancer?
Well, and it doesn't.
Right, but why do
because they didn't think that there would be a group of women, and we were called the little women, through an informant who told us what Merck was calling us, the little women. They didn't think that people would be doing the research on this. Here's the other deal. What Merck never bargained for, or the FDA, or the CDC, or the NCI, is that the social media networking would come into play and affect the numbers. And of course, we know, if anybody following the news, the uptake of the Gardasil vaccine in this country is very, very low. In fact, only a third of the girls who start the series actually finish the series.
Right. Yeah, because they have adverse reactions usually from the first or the second, so they don't go back.
And the deal is that really, as much as Truth About Gardasil has brought awareness to the issue, as much as SaneVax has brought awareness to the issue, it is the girls themselves and the mothers who have really made, I think, one of the largest impacts on HPV vaccine uptake here in the United States. It's the girls talking to other girls. In fact, some of them are even presenting papers and talking in their classes.
Yeah.
And their papers are well documented and well researched because the data is there. And it was so sad for these mothers. As I mentioned, they thought they were doing the right thing for their girls, and their girls got sick.
Yeah.
And they felt so guilty. I mean, it was like a veil falling away from them. I mean, the whole trust element was taken away from them. Now they're dealing with those who have adversely injured daughters, and those numbers are up in the 28,000s, 1 to 10 reporting. And now they have an injured daughter, and their whole world has come crashing down around them. Many of the parents have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on medical bills not covered by insurance companies. They have mortgaged their homes. Some have lost their homes. I mean, the impacts from this have been tremendous, and they're going to be felt for a long time. Some of these girls are still sick years after the supposed vaccine efficacy has worn off.
Yeah.
How can that be?
Yeah, you know, you talked about, too, you said that there are now 26 countries that are involved, and I heard you on one interview talk about there are 3 women in India who are being heard by the Supreme Court, and I was wondering,
And that's exactly right.
Yeah, so is it just with the Gardasil vaccine, or is it just vaccines in general? Could you just tell our viewers a little bit about these amazing group of women? Because I caught a little bit of it, but I thought it's something inspiring, for our audience to know about. So if you can elaborate on that.
I'm going to try and get to that article on my blog because they issued a press release. These women not only did due diligence with the research, but they went undercover to the 3 states in India where these vaccine clinical trials were carried out, unbeknownst to the medical consumers themselves. They're saying there is no informed consent. In fact, I have the press release right here. There is no informed consent, and there was no follow-up for these girls afterwards. And so they have brought a lawsuit against the Gates Foundation, governments around the world. The Supreme Court of India has demanded information from the government of India about these clinical trials. And, of course, now we are waiting to hear what the outcome is going to be. But this is a major historic act that these women, 3 women, filed a writ of petition under Article 32 in the Constitution of India, outlining serious allegations regarding the trialing of the HPV vaccines Gardasil and Cervix on thousands of girls between the ages of 10 and 14 in the states of Andhra Pradesh and Gujarat. The petitioners are being represented by Senior Advocate Colin Gonzalez of the Human Rights Law Network, and the Supreme Court of India has accepted their case. The petitioners maintain the vaccines were illegally brought into the states by the Program for Appropriate Technology in Health, that's PATH, and administered to Indian children before their safety and efficacy was established. Well, these women have done what no other organization, let alone lay women, have done ever before in the world.
Wow. And so, wow. So talking about vaccines in general and what types of exposures they had, you mentioned before some of the harms of the exposure to mercury, and I know some of the vaccines do. I don't believe that the Gardasil vaccine does, but the flu vaccine, they still contains mercury and things like that. So what is mercury doing to the body, and how are we getting it? How is it coming in? How are we coming into contact with it so much?
Oh, my heavens. Mercury is in corn syrup. Mercury is in
shut up.
Mercury is in tuna fish. Mercury is in Coca-Cola, corn syrup again. Mercury is in vaccines. There are 256 mercury hotspots in the United States.
Yeah.
How are we not being exposed to mercury?
Right.
And then I didn't even mention dental fillings.
Right.
Oh, yeah, let's not forget the dental fillings. And mercury is a known neurotoxin. So let's look at what it does. Symptoms of mercury poisoning can include difficulty thinking, concentrating, remembering, fatigue, indigestion, constipation, diarrhea, abdominal pain, muscle pain, anemia, pallor, low blood sugar, hypoglycemia, poor coordination, dizziness, increased susceptibility to infection, fungal, bacterial, viral, loss of sensation, touch, smell, taste, and hearing. It's also implicated in allergies, asthma, autism, ADD, ADHD, OCD, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, ALS, anxiety, depression, eating disorders, schizophrenia, autoimmune diseases, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, multiple sclerosis, digestive disorders, Crohn's, colitis, irritable bowel syndrome, heart diseases, and hormone imbalances, thyroid, adrenal, and sex hormones. Infertility is on the rise in this country.
Yeah,
women are suffering from autoimmune problems. In fact, I just posted an article that came out in the Examiner on February 10th about a strange brain illness that's striking U.S. women. And the article is targeting vaccination as a possible trigger. It is a known fact that mercury and aluminum is in Gardasil, is is lethal
Yeah.
in rat mice.
Right, and they've been using the mercury in the vaccine since the beginning, since the however long they've been running the program, 70 plus years. And to my knowledge, I don't believe they've really ever safety tested it, right? They're basing it on a different type of material, their safety so-called standards. Is that correct?
And that is correct, to the best of my knowledge. Eileen Danneman, I think, might be hearing this call, but I don't know if she's able to be there to join us.
Oh, I am here.
She says she's on the call.
Oh, Eileen, you're there.
Hey, Eileen, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Oh, we have Eileen here. We've been waiting for Eileen. We weren't sure if she was going to join us or not. So hi, Eileen. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. As I've been listening all the while, it's very articulate there, Leslie. Yes.
Yeah, she's great. So Eileen, really quick, let me just tell the audience here. Eileen is a colleague of Leslie's, and we wanted to bring her in today to also talk about some of these things. You've worked as transcendental meditation since 1973, correct? And you're also one of the founders of the National Coalition of Organization for Women.
I'm the founder of the National Coalition of Organized Women and the founder of the Vaccine Liberation Army.
Oh,
awesome.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. And so what is your website, and where can people find the work that you're doing?
Okay, you can look at vaccineliberationarmy.com.
Okay, perfect. So Eileen, since we have you on the line now, we wanted to ask you about some research that you did on the flu vaccine and with relation to pregnancy and the effects that it's had on women who get exposed. I was actually just talking to somebody about this. My babysitter was just asking me about flu vaccines on pregnant women. I was saying, never do that. So tell us about your research on that.
Okay, I do want to say that I remember when Leslie first got started in this. Remember Leslie at the incipient beginnings, and it's been fabulous what you've done. And this connects very well, of course, because it's a woman's issue. And so what happened was a couple of years ago, the National Coalition of Organized Women began to follow the pregnant women who were being urged to get the H1N1 flu shot during the faux pandemic. And so the establishment, the CDC, was on a tear to get this demographics going, even though they had been vaccinating pregnant women with the H1N with the flu shot, the seasonal flu shot, since the late 1990s, the early 2000s. They were vaccinating with the mercury, but they really went on a tear here during the pandemic, and on the basis of actually a fraudulent study that the flu itself it was very dangerous to pregnant women. And that study by Elisa Siston of the CDC was based on reports of pregnant women dying from the flu infection, when the H1N1 flu infection, when in fact they were never given tests to distinguish between H1N1, a flu, or any other kind of pneumonia or anything else. So it was a particularly flawed study. But that was the basis of starting to really get popping to vaccinate pregnant women, of which they did a lot of advertisement and such. So in 2009/2010, pregnant women were being vaccinated. Well, as we were following these pregnant women, we actually were following the VAERS reports and everything else, and it turns out that there was a 4,250% increase in fetal deaths, abortions, stillbirths, while they were giving that shot. 4,250%. So anyway, we calculated all that. I worked with Dr. King, Dr. Paul G. King, and Dr. Gary Goldman. We calculated all that, and Dr. Goldman did an incredible job he's a computer scientist, and I went down to Washington, D.C. myself, made a presentation to the what do you call it, one of the, I can't remember, the ACIP, or anyway, some childhood illness, disease establishment head. And there was about 18 committee members there. And I made this presentation. This was in 2010, so this was September, let's see, it was the year after. In other words, it was the next flu season, the beginning of the next flu season. So it was, September 2010. So I made a presentation that there was this 4,250% increase. And like they were really astounded. But meanwhile, Dr. Marie McCormick, who was from the CDC, that really head honcho, she's the gal that said once that they would never connect vaccines with autism ever. Anyway, this is a really major player. She's on the telephone, and she is going to give her speech about what the data was as far as the H1N1 shot. She was the chairperson specifically in charge of following the results of the H1N1 vaccine because it was an untested vaccine. So she gets on the phone. Now, meanwhile, cosmically speaking, I had gotten there late, and so the secretary of the meeting actually reproduces my papers and puts them, unusually so, because it's usually put in the back of the room, puts my papers on top of each one of these committee members. So they're looking at my paper, which is basically saying all these thousands and thousands of reports of fetal deaths, at the same time as this Dr. Marie McCormick is on the phone calling from the CDC offices, probably in Atlanta, Georgia. So as she's speaking, she's basically saying, oh no, this is going fine. She's the head of the special task force to follow this. Everything's going fine, blah, 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 blah. As she's beginning to speak, the person inside the room, Jeff Evans, who was the head of the committee inside the room, stops the conversation because everyone there is looking at my papers, which is saying there's an incredible thousands of % increase in vaccine reports. And so they weren't listening to her. They were actually kind of reading my paper but not listening to her because they actually thought that my paper was what her lecture was going to be about. You know how you put a paper in front of you and you're reading it while they're saying. And so he stops that and says, no, this is not Marie's paper. Just put that aside and listen. So she finishes. But meanwhile, thank God this happened because someone in the committee says at the end of Dr. Marie McCormick's speech, by the way, has there been any adverse events for H1N1 flu shot? She says, no, none whatsoever, basically. I have that testimony in writing. Nothing, zero, none.
Wow.
So anyway, then she hangs up, okay? But then I'm still in the room, and I'm going to make my presentation. So I make my presentation, but meanwhile, she's not listening because she's hung up. So a week later, I'm on a telephone call now at a public conversation about this, and Dr. Marie McCormick is on a phone call, and she once again gives her same spiel. Everything's okay, just a little Epstein-Barr increase, nothing to talk about, it's really average. And she finishes, and someone says, by the way, Dr. McCormick, has there been any adverse responses in pregnant women? Again, she says no. Meanwhile, all this VAERS data with a 4,250% increase.
Wow.
So anyway, the situation is that worse than that is that what they did was they worked closely with the American Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology. It's run by the publishers Elsevier. Elsevier also runs the journal Pediatrics. They are in total collusion with these two journals. So it's kind of like Murdoch when it comes to main media. This is like the medical journal. This is the Murdoch of medical journals. So they work with the CDC. So they publish. This is really going to get you. They publish in September 2010. After all my work was done, we sent a gal down, Dr. Renee Toko Hunter. We sent her down to Atlanta, made another presentation, and at that time, this was now September, this was it was in the fall there, someone is giving a presentation, Dr. Shimbokura is giving a presentation about, the same thing about, what adverse events, no, it doesn't really matter, not much. He finishes talking, someone in the audience gets up and says, have you got any reports on pregnant women? I think this was October. He shuffles in his bag because he wasn't going to put that as part of his report. He did Guillain-Barré, he did thrombosis, whatever. Everything's fine, everything's wonderful. But meanwhile, this is a pretty big issue. He had to shuffle in his bag to get the slide, and the slide did indeed reveal that our data was correct, that there was this enormous spike, and they're starting to cover it. They're covering it up. So then in September, we get a blast across the world. The flu shot is safe for pregnant women across the world.
Yeah. Based
on this study that was published in AJOG with the CDC by the CDC Dr. Morrow, published a study which is so unbelievable. This is really going to get you. The name of the title of it, was the flu, the H1N1 flu shot from up till 2009, from 20 years is, from 1991 or something to 2009. And so when you read that and you're a doctor, you're thinking, oh, great, I'm going to get to find out the statistics about how the flu shot affected pregnant women from this time to that time. And 2009, obviously, we all know is the pandemic flu season, so that's the title. Now, it goes on to say that there's only been, in 20 years, 1.2 fetal deaths per year for 20 years. That's nothing, man. I mean, the flu shot is safe for pregnant women. Boom, big publicity, led by the CDC, big time publicity all over the world. What he did in September 2010, of which all the statistics of this massive spike was already into the CDC, because it was the VAERS data bank, okay? He already knew that. He cut short and left out the 2009/2010 season. The 2009 season that he was referring to, that everybody thought was the 2009-2010, was the 2008-2009 season. So he actually made everybody think that the pandemic season was covered. And there wasn't 1.2. There was a spike of 4,250% increase. So anyway, they took that basis of that study, and they spread it through the media. The flu shot was safe for pregnant women. On top of that, they get together with 10 nonprofit organizations. We're talking about the March of Dimes, and if you know the history of March of Dimes and history of cancer and the history of all that, anyway, the March of Dimes, the American Medical Association, you name it, pediatrics, everybody, 10 nonprofits. The CDC organizes a joint letter by these 10 nonprofits written directly to every OBGYN in the United States that they should continue to give the flu shot to pregnant women, but only give them one because they are doing a trivalent and putting all the strains in one. They should continue giving it to the pregnant women. So I call the March of Dimes and I say to them, did you know at the time when you wrote that joint letter that there was a 4,250% increase in abortions at that time? Well, they totally stonewalled me because if they said, yes, we knew, then these 10 organizations would have been complicit in misleading the OBGYNs and covering up this whole thing. If they said, no, oh my God, we didn't know, the CDC never told us, even though they knew at the time, then they would have implicated the CDC, which is their bread and butter. So I've been stonewalled, okay? So nothing has come from that. So now, since with all the flu shots safe for pregnant women, our report has gone out through the internet with Christine England and Vaccine Truth and all over the world now, but within the internet circles. I have not been able to get this 4,250 deaths to public media, even though I've written articles for Des Moines Register. Can't get it out in any way. It turns out, so Dr. Gary Goldman, who's our computer science consultant, he gets published in September, this September, in the Human Human and Environmental Toxicology Journal, which is a very prestigious peer-reviewed journal, because AJOG refused to publish us because we were accusing them of all this malfeasance. Anyway, so he gets published just this past September, and so that leads to this really academic science moment here. And so what's happening is that CDC can't argue this. We've got all the goods. We have all the documents. We have Marie McCormick's testimony. We have all the lines and everything. So they haven't come to us to make us crazy, but what they did, which they usually do, is they have another 2 studies that have come forth. The flu shot is safe for pregnant women from Denmark, which was part of like the Thorson study. The fraudulent Thorson study came from Denmark, that there was no link to autism. So here's another Denmark study and another Norway study with the hype, flu shot is safe for pregnant women because of their study. Well, it turns out that the 2009-2010 American vaccines here, not only was 1 given to pregnant women, but 2, they were double dosed with the H1N1 untested vaccine with mercury, 25 mcgs of mercury, and double dose with the regular seasonal flu, which also had 25 mcgs of mercury. In the first trimester, second and third, we're talking about 50 micrograms of mercury injected into a 4-week fetus. Wow. Okay?
Jeez. Well, you know what? I just want to cut you off for a second, because I just noticed that, we're just getting attacked from different directions by all these different types of toxins in the vaccines and stuff. And I know, Leslie, you've also done some research on BPAs, right? It's another, vaccines are major environmental toxin, but, there's also BPAs. And what is it what does it stand for? Bisphenol?
Bisphenol phosphate, and then there's BPS, and the major culprit of that is plastics. And please, whatever you do, do not microwave in plastic. And you go to a grocery store and you see everything packaged in plastic. Hormone imbalance is rampant amongst men and women, and I have a lot of that information on my blog, and I cover it on my radio shows. But I do want to go back to what Eileen was saying, and if anybody is concerned about mercury toxicity, they should listen to the interview I just did with Richard Diaz. He is the author of Illness Defined, and I just did this interview last Monday night, February 11th. It's on my blog, holyhormones.com. This is a very amazing story, and Richard has been working with Charlie Sheen. And we all know Charlie Sheen as the notorious bad boy. Right. And Charlie Sheen was pretty much at the bottom of his barrel after getting kicked off of 2.5 Men a couple of years ago. And Richard made contact with him and convinced him, based on his research and what he shared with Charlie, to get his amalgams out. Charlie has made a total comeback.
Yeah, he has.
And he's been on all of the talk show circuits. He's been touting it to testosterone cream, adding to his roid rage. But when you start looking at the ingredients in testosterone cream, people, there's heavy metals in it. So be that as it may, and I do want to say, this has been a most amazing time in our lives, that you have women like Eileen Donovan, and others, and myself, and the women involved with SaneVax, and Truth About Gardasil, and all of you women, that we are coming together and doing the research.
Yeah.
I mean, there are mothers, housewives, who now know more about their doctors. I mean, know more than their doctors, excuse me. They have become the researchers. They have documented. They have done a phenomenal amount of work to back up their concerns. And there are many, many doctors now beginning to take note and refusing to administer the Gardasil vaccine as well as the flu vaccine. And Eileen has done incredible work on this. And let me also tell you, and I know Eileen will back this up, that the Gardasil vaccine has the largest incident of abortions, miscarriages, and stillbirths.
You know what, too? I was just curious because I heard you say in your research a while ago that the immune system is at the lowest when women are menstruating, right?
Thank you so much.
So I'm sorry. I just want to ask really fast. So when girls are given vaccines, because of the toxins in the vaccines, on top of the fact that their immune system is very low, it definitely, obviously, makes them more vulnerable to getting adverse effects. Yeah. So do you think that the medical community had conscious knowledge of this? Do you think it's just a case of callous disregard, or do you think it's malintent toward especially developing women?
This is called menstrual cycle evaluation. Menstrual cycle evaluation is not taken into the consideration for any diagnostic test or surgery or vaccination policy or medication policy. And it is a white male medical system. Right. Women are the deviant sex. All right, not enough research has been done on women's bodies in relationship to anything. That's been documented over and over and over again. How I came into this conversation was because of my years of research and the work that I have done and the concerns that I have raised, is that vaccinating girls at the most fragile time of their lives, which is menarche, the time of first menstruation, is dangerous, period.
Yeah.
And it is. When you have these toxins that cross the blood-brain barrier, they affect the endocrine and the immune system. It's called the NEI supersystem, the neurological, the endocrine, and the immune system. There's a whole new field opening up called neuroendoimmunology. Now, when the damage to the brain is repaired, then the endocrine and the immune systems fall back into balance and place. But the girls are having all three of these issues: neurological, endocrine, and immunological problems. We do not know the long-ranging effects. In fact, the article that you just, when you referenced BPA, there's a recent study that just came out that showed the rats who were, lab mice that were injected with BPA were having higher rates of infertility and other sexual problems 3 generations down the line.
Wow. Oh
this has amazing implications. We still do not know what the implications are going to be for Gardasil or the flu vaccine.
Right.
And we do know that there are over 300 toxins that have been found in the umbilical cord.
Ugh.
So these things are being passed down genetically. And that is what is happening with women and men and hormone imbalance. This estrogen that has been built up in the body from synthetic hormone use, from plastics, from household solvents, is being passed down. And now girls at an earlier and earlier age are suffering from anxiety, depression, and allergies and autoimmune disorders. You add a vaccine into that mix, and it's wreaking havoc on everybody's system. The implications are phenomenal.
Hey, Leslie, did you mention that in California that the bill that Governor Brown signed allows an underage child to get a HPV vaccine without the knowledge, without the consent or the knowledge of their parents?
Is that AB 499?
Yeah, we live in California. We did a show on that. Yeah. Yeah, that was a really disappointing thing that went through. We were very working hard to get that thing vetoed, and it did not. So that was pretty upsetting. But yeah, that's true. They can get the Gardasil vaccine, and they can also get any other type of STD vaccine as well, and any kind of contraception. It's really sick, actually. There's even more. They can even get psychiatric meds without their parents' knowledge. I mean, when you
wait, hold on that one. They can get psychiatric meds without their parents' knowledge.
Yeah, see, what that bill was an amendment to an existing family code in California, and the family code, when I started researching the bill, that was an add-on to the STD part of it, but because kids were already able to get contraception and other kinds of things, and so then they added in vaccines. But existing was that they can actually go to a doctor and some psychiatrist, and they can give them Ritalin or Prozac or these types of things without their parents' knowledge or consent.
You're joking.
No, I wish.
No, we're not joking. I think that's how I came into contact with all of you in April Bowden, was when we were all working on this bill in California and trying to bring awareness to the issue. And the deal is, you know, the vaccine industry is how many years old? 40, 50 years old, Eileen? And it really has not changed. In fact, Dr. Boyd Haley, who is professor and chair of the Department of Chemistry at the University of Kentucky, said in 2001, people, a single vaccine given to an infant is like giving a 180-pound adult 30 vaccines on the same day.
Yeah.
So, but now what's happening is genetically and generationally, our immune systems have become more toxic, have become weakened, have become more compromised.
Now that's true, Leslie. You know, with the because it's been going on for a while. Because from 1980 to like 2001, when Congressman Burton finally got the CDC to take the 15 vaccines that had mercury out of the children's schedule. So from 1980 to 2001, there were 15 vaccines with mercury out of the 39 vaccine doses that the kids are getting. Now, in 2000, now that leads us that these 1980 girls are now how old? They're like 30 years old.
Yeah. Right.
Right now they're having babies. They've had 15 shots of vaccines. Now the interesting thing, which is a little more complicated with another show, but these children that are being born, they're all of a sudden they're people are saying, oh, the establishment people, oh, it's genetic, oh, it's genetic, oh, it's genetic. Well, the fact is mercury can affect a woman's ovaries, okay, and actually create in the ovary a genetic mutation. But how do you know you have a genetic mutation in your ovary? You know, you just go ahead and have kids. Right. So all these people are being born totally disabled, you know, and they're finding, oh, there's a genetic reason for it. But they don't get back to the cause of the genetic reason for it.
Because you can't do genetics.
Check it out and check it out, you know.
Yeah. And this is the brilliant point that Richard Diaz makes. If you have an illness that is not diagnosable and that there is no known cure, then chances are you have heavy metal poisoning. Yeah. So let's look at that list that I shared earlier. And everything on it, allergies, asthma, autism, ADHD, chronic fatigue, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. What we have seen are medications developed for that illness, but it's not curing it.
Right. Oh, it's making it
still
worse.
Masking the symptoms, and the symptoms, the organic influence, the organic cause, according to Diaz, is heavy metal toxicity.
And Leslie, one thing that, because you do a lot of your research is on hormones and things like that, so what about the effects of the pill or synthetic birth controls that women are taking? I mean, how is that affecting you? Like if I took those when I was younger and then I have a child, do I pass down, you know, does that change my genetic makeup, is what I'm saying, or would that? Yes. Okay.
I need to talk to you a little bit about this.
Okay, great.
The birth control pill has been on the market for 40 years. It has been called the largest uncontrolled medical experiment in history. Again, now we are generations down the line, women suffering severe hormone imbalances, anxiety, depression, being put on Prozac, other SSRIs, antipsychotics, and they're being switched back and forth on these synthetic hormones. I posted an article in 2009 called What is Hormone Imbalance Anxiety? Had 5 comments to it. All of a sudden in June of 2012, started getting more comments of women really suffering. I reposted it, and now I'm up to 600 comments from women suffering. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Now, I'm not finished. I'm just getting going. Here's the deal. The American College of Obstetrics and Gynecologists, Eileen has referred to this as, I call it ACOG. You said what, Eileen?
ACOG. This is the American Journal of Obstetrics.
Oh, journal, okay. So the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecologists just came out with new guidelines for birth control this year. And the pill is passé, folks. The pill is passé because of human error. Because let's look at the fact that we're giving the pill to girls who are younger and younger who, can't remember to eat breakfast in the morning. How are they going to remember to take a pill every single day? All right, so they have changed their guidelines to synthetic IUDs, to injections, like the Depo-Provera injection, which, by the way, might I add, and okay, I will add, is used as a castration tool for sex offenders in prison. Depo-Provera. And they are also recommending Implanon. Highly recommending Implanon, which is a synthetic a rod that is inserted into a woman's arm. Oh, yes, I will say it can get lost and has been known to get lost, swimming around in the arm somewhere. Okay, so we've got a synthetic IUD, Marina, progestin-based, which can cause diabetes. Okay, we've got Depo-Provera, which is a sex castration tool for men, and we've got Implanon. It used to be Nexplanon, which was 4 rods, but was taken off the market. It's still on the market in Europe. I started doing some research on Implanon. I went, really, who is the manufacturer of this rod? And guess who it is? It's Merck Pharmaceutical Company.
Get out of town.
I am not.
No, I know, but it's just like it's not a surprise,
This is collusion. Because they are recommending this for adolescent girls, teenage girls, who are too young to advocate condom use for themselves, to protect themselves from STDs. And then they're standing on the other side of the fence, ready with their HPV vaccine. How illegal is that?
Wow. And then, what I think is, what is potentially going to happen is the HIV vaccine, which then they'll have another STD vaccine that, girls can take without their parents' knowledge. Scary.
And I keep saying, where are the boys? Where are the men in all of this? Where's their accountability? And the other deal is, and this is really frightening, women have fought so hard for birth control. Right, Eileen? You're the same age as I am. You and I, you remember all of this. We fought so hard for the right to control our own bodies. And yet, we lost control. Because now, birth control has been turned against women. Because now, we have to go to our doctor to get this IUD, to get this injection, to get this implant. We have to see a doctor, and then if it's not working for us, we have to go back to our doctor and argue with them. And they say, it's all in your head.
I hate that comment.
All of these issues are in our head because it's affecting our brain functioning.
I also want to comment on, as we move towards having your period and birth control, and we move towards getting pregnant, two things. One is the Mayo Clinic, has determined that, a lot of these young women now are on psych drugs because they haven't acknowledged that it's vaccine injury. They call it mental illness. So we have a lot of ADHD, ADD, bipolar and all that. Well, these women that have been taking these psych drugs for all these years, besides the hormones, besides everything else they've been taking, and then the Gardasil shot at 12 years old, they are now basically, apparently, we're having a lot of sterility problems these days. I mean, my father used to tell me not to go in a car because just being in the car alone without doing anything might get me pregnant.
That's so funny.
Today, now, so meanwhile, as they're moving towards giving birth to their own family, not only is the child, like with the rat studies that Leslie mentioned, not only is the child becoming infertile because of all this past, but these girls that are 30 years old today, 28 years old, had 15 injections of mercury, and they have to, therefore they've been saying they're mentally ill and they're taking Effexor or Luxpro, whatever they're taking. Mayo Clinic is saying that these children are being born deformed, and when they have this little list where they say, well, if you give them this drug, they will have this kind of deformity, but go ahead and give it to them anyway. Because their problem now is that you can't just take these women off of their psych meds.
Right.
They're pregnant, So they have it all toxicity build up there. They can't get off their psych meds. They're having deformed children. Now, on top of that, before they even know they're having deformed children, on top of that, they go to the doctor, and now, because of this cover-up that we spoke about of the H1N1 seasonal flu shot, it turns out that they are now not only getting the flu shot as every doctor is urging the flu shot, and they make them scared, and they say, no, you have to get the flu shot with Mercury, but they're now, because they have succeeded in fooling the public, they're getting now the TDAP shot while they're pregnant. So now they have 4 doses of vaccines in utero.
Oh, my God. I'm so glad that you brought up the male. I just want to backtrack for a second because you said, where are the men in this? Because it just seems like women are just being voraciously attacked, with vaccines and all of these things. And I've heard you describe the women as being like the nucleus of the atom when it comes to society. And I mean, do you think that men are being attacked in a different way, and that maybe we need a balance of both, like some kind of symbiotic relationship for men and women for us in order for the human race to survive and thrive? Or do you think that specifically by attacking the women, it just makes everything fall apart?
First of all, let me say I'm so impressed by the research that you have done, that you picked that up. And yes, I have said that women are like the nucleus of the atom, and that it is that nucleus of the atom that holds the electrons and the protons in place, and the electrons and the protons are the men and children in place. Our life, every cell in our body, follows circadian rhythms. It is the dance of our universe. It is the dance of the moon. It is the dance of the seasons. And when we interrupt that circadian rhythm cycle, either with synthetic hormones, medications, heavy metals, that is when the disease process takes place. And yes, women are, it seems the more power that women gain, and we have fought long and hard, right, Eileen? I go back to this because I know you're my age. We have fought long and hard, and it seems the more power and the more influence that we get in our lives, in our business lives, in our home lives, that the more drugs and vaccines and synthetic hormones are being we are being bombarded with.
Yeah.
Well,
you cannot get away from that.
I'm thinking about men who are not able to get it up. I mean, they're being attacked too.
Yeah, because that's used to be such a problem. You didn't see commercials for drugs that help men, with erectile dysfunction. I mean, I never heard of that until the last 10 years or so.
Well, you could look at it this way. It is actually a woman's problem.
That's a very good point, actually. But no, it is a huge medical experiment. Men are being bombarded. There are a lot of ripple effects, side effects now that are affecting men. It has become a runaway train. This company, this country, this world thrives on illness. That's where money is made. It does not thrive on healing people. It thrives on the disease process and keeping people diseased. Yeah. And therefore, the pharmaceutical companies, which are the most powerful company in the world, more powerful than governments, i.e., they can get this type of legislation passed and buy off the government of the state of California and other states with their lobbying, is now running the show, people. Is now running the show. And that is anyone read Brave New World?
Oh, yeah.
I've read excerpts.
This is Brave New World. This is George Orwell. This is all of it coming to pass now, and we're suffering, but our children and our grandchildren are going to be suffering anymore. We cannot separate ourselves from the whole macrocosm.
Yeah.
What we are doing, the cancer that we have in ourselves, cancer is a fallacy, but the imbalances in ourselves are also apparent in our environment.
Yeah. It's like Brave New World mixed with Children of Men. Too, because we're getting to the point if this goes on.
And if I can get any point across to anybody, is that everybody has to be on some sort of nutritional supplement, because we are no longer getting the 90 essential vitamins and minerals from the foods that we ingest, not even organics, because the soil has been so depleted from essential minerals. Yeah. It is not happening, folks. If you do anything for yourselves, take the money that you would invest in going to see a doctor or going into a medication and make sure that you are buying nutritional supplements. Dr. Joe Wallach, who has written a book called Dead Doctors Don't Lie and who has a wonderful product, it believes and has written in his book, Dead Doctors Don't Lie, that there's no such thing as disease.
Right.
What does exist is nutrient depletion.
And toxicity, probably.
And toxicity, and combined with heavy metal toxicity.
I want to take that, knowing that you're a really spiritual person, I want to take that even deeper. So if I was going to leave anybody with a message, this is what it would be. I've been meditating, as April pointed out, I've been meditating about 40 years now, transcendental meditation. I am 66 years old and basically in perfect health. And I did receive the polio vaccines, the Salk and the Sabin vaccines in the day. Wow. And I just watched Dr. Kent's video, of all the conspiracies that were going on at the time. But during that time, the polio vaccine was contaminated with FC40, which was a monkey virus, and that the gal who was the head of one of the agencies, who was a real true gal, was saying that there would be an epidemic of cancer that you wouldn't believe. And I realized there is this huge epidemic of cancer. Now, I got those 2 shots, but I am in very good balance because of, I eat organic food and stuff like that. But meditating, I have this technique called living on light. So when I meditate, I just do transcendental meditation, and I'm going like beyond physical reality. And so when I come back towards physical reality, you have to actually, but it's automatic, but you actually re-stamp your physiology on the original template of your humanity, so that like my particular individuality, I go back to the absolute, which is nothing, which is the unified field. And then when I come out of the unified field, somewhere along the line, I have to re-stamp my individuality, because I am an individuality of totality, because there's nothing but totality. There's no beginning, no end. Everything is within that totality. So I have found with my health, I do not do supplements at all, even though the time that I did. I actually live my life because I meditate. I'm able to live my life prior to the manifestation. And so therefore, I basically re-stamp myself prior to illness. And I'm in perfect health, and I don't do supplements.
Wow, that's really interesting. Okay. That could be a whole other show.
Yeah, I just made a note of that. I'm like writing notes. We have to have you guys back on separately, because you guys are just like full of information. We didn't even get to all the questions that we want to ask you, both of you. So we have to wrap up now because we're just about out of time. But Eileen, let's start with you. Where can we get more information about what things that you're doing? Do you have a website or something you can direct our listeners to?
Yeah, my website is vaccineliberationarmy.com.
All right, and Leslie, how about you?
It's holyhormones.com. And it's funny because I came up with that name, Holy Hormones, honey, in the Batman days, when it was Holy whatever Batman, and I thought, Holy Hormones. And so who would have thought I would have built a radio show and a huge website and everything based on holy, sacred hormones. But really that is what has come to pass, and hormone imbalance is one of the major epidemics. Don't be fooled into all of these subcategories of diseases that the pharmaceutical and the medical industry has created. It all comes down to heavy metal toxicity and hormone imbalance.
And injecting you with viruses, that you have to deal with.
Yeah. Oh, well, there is that.
Yeah, foreign DNAs and everything else. Yeah. So, well, great. Once again, thank you guys both for being on the show. And Leslie, you can find her at Holy Hormones, and Eileen at Vaccine Liberation Army. And Virstyne and I are going to take a short break, and when we get back, we're going to close the show. So, but thanks again, ladies. You've been really, really informative. We hope to have you back.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Thanks, Leslie.
All right. Bye-bye.
Hello, thanks for having me on your radio. Even though we're not from a famous rock and roll band, if we were, even though we sound a little like we are, we'd definitely wear a Conspiracy Realist t-shirt, because they're gear, aren't they? Oh yeah, they're really gear. I want to write a song about them. Conspiracy Realist t-shirt at truthertees.com. I gotta think of a little A. Shop.truthertees.com. What does that mean? It's the internet. What's that? I don't know. It's a net. It's between things. Shop.truthertees.com. What's that? So you get the Conspiracy Realist t-shirt. Oh, yeah.
You have the human right to make an informed voluntary decision whenever you're going to take a medical risk that could hurt you or your child.
There are questions being asked about the vaccine known as Gardasil. About 8 million American girls have gotten the vaccine, but is it safe? Here's Cheryl Atkinson.
The hope is that Gardasil will prove to be a lifesaver, preventing deadly cervical cancer. But today, Merck's HPV vaccine is dealing with a growing number of reports of serious side effects. Jamie Venice passed out and had a seizure after her Gardasil shot. She was lucky compared to Amanda Ratner. She came down with an illness so excruciating she had to take morphine. Her parents, both doctors, blame Gardasil.
She's gone from the position of being a competitive varsity lacrosse player in high school to somebody who's chronically ill.
Gardasil was approved in 2006 for girls as young as age 9. The conservative-funded public interest group Judicial Watch has obtained more than 8,000 adverse events reports under Freedom of Information law. The reports reveal everything from massive wart outbreaks to seizures and paralysis. Of 18 deaths, nearly a quarter cited blood clots.
Hi, my name is Becca. I got my second Gardasil shot in January of 2008. Now it's November 2008, and I've had problems every day ever since.
One of the reasons that I'm here is the toxicity of vaccinations as they have been used for such a long time in this country.
My concerns are the absence of any adequate safety studies looking at the long-term detrimental effects of vaccines used in childhood, and the almost cavalier continuance of the process of introducing more untested vaccines into a schedule of vaccination that is already appalling in terms of its scientific underpinnings.
If I had never gotten this shot, I would be a normal teenager, and I wish I could go back. How I describe the back pain is more like being stabbed in the back with a knife, and at the same time having someone put a lighter under the muscle. It's just a horrible pain. I wish there was a way to cure this, and I hope that they can figure something out, a treatment plan. But I can't plan for that. I have to think of my life if this never went away.
The current climate of vaccine science is very controversial. The information that we're being given, that I was taught in medical school, is not consistent with safety and efficacy. As we see the number of vaccines being added to the schedule, we're also seeing a tremendous increase in the number of chronic illnesses in children.
Vaccines have never been shown to promote health. And one of the things that's fraudulent is that certain public health officials and others have declared that vaccines are improving health. It's always been, well, if we decrease hepatitis, then we're improving health. Well, what's happening is we're decreasing viral hepatitis, but we're increasing asthma, or we're increasing peanut allergies or obesity, type 2 diabetes, type 1 diabetes. So health really isn't improving in the population at all. What we're seeing is a change in the disease mix, where we're seeing less infectious diseases, but we're seeing more autoimmune and inflammatory conditions as we stimulate the immune system.
In November of this year, Gabby was diagnosed with inflammation of the central nervous system as a result to the Gardasil vaccine. She's suffered from 2 TIAs, or mini strokes. She is now vomiting on a regular basis. She is dizzy, experiencing pain throughout her entire body. She's experiencing things that none of us could fathom our children ever experiencing.
Hi, my name is Karen. This is my daughter Megan. We spread her ashes here November 15th. She passed away on that day, and we are desperately begging the Obama administration to please investigate this. We need to find out why these young ladies are losing their lives and why so many of them are sick.
Most doctors I know have stopped giving this vaccine because of the safety issues around it now.
As a gynecologist, Dr. Jacques Moritz sees the deadly effects of cervical cancer. He is also the father of an 11-year-old daughter.
I'm not going to have my daughter vaccinated right now.
Why not?
Because I think there's other ways to prevent cervical cancer, the old standards, pap smear, routine exams, and this vaccine, I just don't know enough about it yet.
It was official. I had an adverse reaction. I lost the ability to walk. I started falling down. I needed help. I had head pressure. This is very hard to talk about. It's pretty much taken 2 years of my life away. I'm going to be 23 next week. And I feel like all my hopes and dreams have been ripped from me. I can't go to school. I can't be normal. I can't go out with friends. I can't have a good time. I can't handle noise. I can't handle conversations. This vaccine has to be taken off the market.
Thanks for listening to Truth or Talk. Please visit our website, truthertease.com, or store shop.truthertease.com. So, hey, Virstyne.
Hey.
Hey, we just interviewed Leslie, and then her friend or her colleague, Eileen Danneman, was able to chime in. That was kind of, it was kind of crazy, those 2 ladies, huh? Because they're like,
they both flew out. They have a lot of, a lot of people that we have on this show, they know a lot of stuff. That's why we have them on. They've been researching for years, and it had a lot to say. So I think we made the decision to. I felt bad that I cut Eileen off and we weren't able to finish hearing her talk. So we're going to have them back on at a later date separately. So they've all done some. They both done some interesting research on their subjects. So we want them to get a little bit more in depth with that. So we want to have them back definitely later on.
Yeah, Leslie is. Obviously, she's one of the most predominant experts on the Gardasil vaccine. And, at the top of the show, we talked to Sarah, our friend Sarah, who's damaged by the Gardasil vaccine. But she also just knows a lot about women's health in general. Like, I really would like to go into more depth about the whole birth control thing, the synthetic, because there's a lot of people that talk about vaccines, and there's a lot of people that talk about some of these other toxins, the GMOs and the BPA and all that, but not much is being said about the whole birth control issue.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's kind of, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go on. You go.
I was going to say, it's kind of interesting because it's like, she brought up the whole fact that, of her era, her and Eileen being, the women of the 60s and the 70s, and how that was when they were just starting to make these legal for women, and they could kind of control their right, whether or not they wanted to have a baby and when they wanted to have a baby, and then with these birth controls. But it ended up kind of being to their detriment. They fought to have these things, but then it ended up being to their detriment because these things are so highly toxic, and then they cause you problems later in life. So I don't know. It's all part of the whole shim sham on the whim whim. Everything's backwards,
Yeah.
So I don't know, but definitely, have you ever been on birth control?
I have. I have, but I stopped a while. And you know what? I honestly really got on birth control because I had really bad menstrual cramps, like terrible. And I still do. They're a little better, but to this day I still do. But when I was on them, I just felt like I wasn't myself.
Yeah.
I felt like really kind of wrong and off.
Yeah.
And my friends didn't want to hang out with me. Because I was just a bitch, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I literally had one friend, we were going to hang out one day and I called him. I was like, hey, what's up? And he's like, you sound moody. He's like, are you on your period? I was like, yeah. And he's like, call me in a week. You know?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, like literally. Yeah, so. But I love him for that. He's a very honest guy. So, but yeah, like I think, you know, I mean, it's a struggle sometimes too. I think, you know, Leslie talked a little bit about hormone imbalance and how it affects women, and I would like her to get more in depth, you know, talk more in depth about that. But yeah, I did. I was on birth control. Plus, they had me on this one birth control which was actually, and you know, I was definitely asleep then, you know, but which was supposed to stop my period until I needed it again. It was called Levelin, I think. Yeah, Levelin. So basically, I was supposed to have my period like every 4 months. And I would still spot, not to get graphic, but I think people need to know this. I would still spot in between. I wouldn't have a full period, but I would have still a small one. And it was like I was always on my period. So I was like, what the fuck, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Bullshit. Instinctually, I was just like, I feel wrong, maybe I shouldn't, you know?
Yeah.
And then I had a girlfriend who had done research on women that, you know, they found that were on birth control and they found holes in their uteruses. After they died, or even after long-term use, they just found that they had holes in their uteruses. I didn't check out the research for myself. I don't think my friend was lying, but yeah, so that kind of freaked me out too. I was like, ugh.
Yeah, I think this stuff is really creepy. I mean, I remember seeing this commercial for Yaz, and Yaz has now been.
I remember that.
Yeah, and they were like, oh, you get a period like once a year or something. Like you take this pill once a month, and then I don't know. It was very strange.
Maybe audition for one of those.
For that commercial.
Yeah, like
well,
yeah, I remember that.
The whole thing, when it first came out, I remember seeing the video and I was like, oh my god, that looks terrible. Because I had a similar experience as you. I felt wrong, like my whole body. And it almost like that feeling that you get when you have, right before you get your period, you have PMS, and you're kind of like, you're sensitive, and you have like, I felt like I was like that all the time.
Yeah.
And I didn't like that feeling. Because usually, I mean, if you get that naturally, you get that kind of, your hormonal imbalance, you're a little more sensitive, you know, both emotionally and physically.
And your senses are aware, and it's just imagine, you know,
right.
The senses behind all the time. If you're not, I mean, it's...
Yeah. And so I did it once when I was in my 20s, and I was on it for about a month, and when you miss a day, you're supposed to double up. And so I doubled up the next day, and oh my god, I was vomiting all night long. I woke up at like 3 in the morning, and I was throwing up. I was so sick, and it took me like a whole day to get over it. And I remember calling the clinic that gave me the pills, and I was telling them this, and they were like, oh, well, you just need to, next time you double up, make sure that you like take it like an hour or two apart. And then they said, yeah, and then maybe you just want to get a new brand. And that's always their thing. Well, just come in for a new brand. And it's like, yeah, but if you're doing this hormonal changes and it causes this reaction in your body where it's like highly toxic, maybe that's not a good thing.
Yeah.
You know,
but at the time, you know, we were still under that you were trusting doctors. No,
I stopped right then. I was like done after that. I never took it again. And then I did once when after I had Avery, my oldest son, they told me that, you know, it's really dangerous to get pregnant your first year after you have a baby. So they say you have to, so once you go to the doctor's office for your 6th week after you have a baby, they do a follow-up to make sure you're okay, and then they make you leave with birth control. And so, a birth control prescription or some sort. And so she made me leave with a birth control prescription, and I started taking it, and for about 2 weeks I felt that same feeling come back where I was like, not feeling good in my body again, and I said, screw this, I'm tossing this, and I never did it again. And so I have taken them, but not much, so hopefully I didn't damage myself too badly, but, because I felt it, I knew it, I was like, this feels weird, and they would say, well, come in and get a new brand, and I just didn't trust that. So I actually trusted, that was a smart move, I think, because I didn't just do what they were telling me, because they wanted me to come in and just get another brand, and I was like, ugh, no thank you.
Yeah, you felt it in your body, you know, it's just like...
But this Yaz thing, like these guys are all now it's like the Cat Williams joke where he has the joke about, you know, you see the commercial for the drug and then like 2 months later you see the quiet commercial where it's like, have you or a loved one been...
Yeah, totally. And they give like, you know, like 80,000 like side effects that the drug had, and it's yeah.
And then a couple months later, there's all these people that are suing. There's a class action suit. So that's going on with the Yaz thing right now.
Yeah, and the thing is, no amount of money, if you lose, like, I don't know, a body function, or if you lose a relative or somebody, like, no amount of money is going to make that right, you know?
No, and then when they have so many people, too, and it's like a big class action suit, generally the people end up getting a lot less money because they, you know, then it gets divided amongst all the people who were using it during that time period. So, you know, I would like to have Leslie back on, and Elaine too, because I didn't know before she came on that she was the founder of the Vaccine Liberation Army, which is a really organization and website. So,
plus she did some research on transcendental meditation, which I would love to know more about.
Yes, definitely. So we can definitely talk to those ladies about coming back on individually, so we can really dig into what is...
Take their brains and really get into...
a preview of what's to come, because we're going to bring them back and talk about some of these things that I think are underreported on. They're not covered as much, and maybe we should talk about it a little more. So anyway, so having said that, we're going to go ahead and close out the show because we are out of time, but we thank you all for listening, and we thank all of our guests, Sarah at the top of the hour, and Leslie and Eileen for coming on, and please visit our website, truthertease.com, or store shop.truthertease.com. Until next time, peace, truth, and love.
Peace, truth, and love, you guys.
Thank you.